We aren't being visited by spacemen from other planets. We are interacting with an ancient, interdimensional mechanism that has always been here. A control system that just changes its mask to fit the vocabulary of the era it's interacting with. In our last episode, we tracked the matriarchs, the surviving physical bloodlines of the giants. We found them hiding in the deep oceans as sirens. We found them in the untamed wilderness as gorgons and hags. But flesh is fragile. Even for a genetically engineered apex predator, biology has an expiration date. Eventually, the matriarchs died. The giants of the Bronze Age were slaughtered. The massive bodies that once terrified earthly humanity rotted into the soil. When a human being dies, the ancient texts say their spirit goes to a waiting place, Sheol, the underworld. But the Nephilim weren't human. They were an illegal, unauthorized hybrid of angelic beings and terrestrial women. So when their physical bodies finally broke down, their spirits had nowhere to go. Heaven wouldn't take an abomination. The human underworld wasn't designed for celestial DNA. They were trapped. If you want to hide a monster, you don't erase it. You just keep changing its name until people forget what it originally was. In episode 5, we tracked the physical giants. But today, we are tracking what survived them. Because according to the oldest texts on Earth, the death of the giants wasn't the end of the nightmare. It was the birth of a new one. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to watch a biological weapon evolve into a ghost, then into a medieval fairy, and finally into a modern-day extraterrestrial. If you've ever felt like the modern UFO phenomenon is hiding a much older, darker secret, hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. And let's open the archives. When the Israelites encountered the remnants of the giant clans in the Bronze Age, they had a very specific name for them, the Rephaim. But to understand the secret behind that word, we have to look outside the Bible to a neighboring ancient civilization in Syria called Ugarit. Archaeologists unearthed texts in Ugarit that talked about a cult of the dead called the Rapiuma. The Canaanites believed that the ancient, dead warrior kings of of the past were still lingering around as powerful spirits. They would hold massive, drunken feasts in the graveyards to summon these spirits, asking for their blessing and fertility. They were worshiping the ghosts of the giants. The biblical authors knew exactly what the Canaanites were doing, and they hijacked the word. In the book of Genesis, the Rephaim are physical, towering giants, like King Og of Bashan, whose bed was over 13 feet long. By the time you get to the book of Isaiah and the Psalms, the exact same word, Rephaim, is used to describe the disembodied spirits, the dead lingering in the shadows of the underworld. The Bible itself shows the transition. The physical bodies died. The giants fell. But the consciousness survived. To understand the exact mechanics of this, we have to look at the Book of Enoch, chapter 15. The moment the Creator delivers the final verdict upon the spirit of the dead giants, the text says, "And now the giants, who are produced from the spirits of flesh, shall be called evil spirits upon the earth. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men and from the holy watchers." Look at the horrifying biology of this curse. Because they possess angelic essence, they cannot be destroyed. But on the other hand, because they possess human biology, they are irrevocably tethered to the dirt. They are cosmic orphans. Enoch says these disembodied spirits will roam the earth, causing sorrow, corruption, and affliction. And here's the most terrifying part. Enoch explicitly states that they will hunger, but cannot eat. They will thirst, but they cannot drink. They are the ultimate tragic monsters. Invisible, starving, and violently territorial. They crave the sensory experience of the physical world, the taste of food, the feeling of the wind, the rush of adrenaline. But they no longer have the nervous system to feel it. This is why, in the New Testament, you see demons consistently trying to possess physical bodies. Whether it's a human being or a herd of pigs, they are addicts, desperate for a physical vehicle so they can interact with the material world again. And for the first few centuries of Christianity, this wasn't fringe theory. This was the wildly accepted origin of demons. They weren't fallen angels in hell. They were the starving ghosts of the Nephilim, trapped on earth. When the Roman Empire adopted Christianity, the theology became highly institutionalized. They flattened the lore. They took the Watchers, the Nephilim ghosts, and the ancient pagan gods, threw them all into a single, tidy box and slapped a label on it. Demon. But the people living out in the deep forests of Europe knew better, because they were still encountering them. In northern Europe, the Celts called them the Thua de Danann, an ancient, godlike race that was driven underground. Eventually, folklore downgraded their name to the Ishi, or the Fae. The medieval world called them fairies. Now you need to completely erase the modern, sanitized Disney image from your mind. These weren't tiny women with butterfly wings making dresses for princesses. They were terrifying, ancient, interdimensional entities that lived deep in the untamed forests and inside hollow underground mounds. And if you look at their behavior, the connection to the Nephilim becomes undeniable. Celtic folklore claimed that the Fae would sneak into human homes in the middle of the night. They would paralyze the parents. They would abduct human infants and leave behind a sickly, mutated replica called a changeling. Why? Because the Fae were believed to suffer from genetic degradation. They were obsessed with human genetics. They were desperate to crossbreed, to steal human vitality, to somehow anchor their decaying, ethereal bloodlines back into the physical world. Does an obsession with illicit human entity hybridization sound familiar? It should. It's the exact same crime their fathers, the Watchers, committed in Genesis 6.
Wait. Time out. Dave, are you telling me, are you seriously telling me that Tinkerbell is actually the disembodied, starving ghost of an ancient biological weapon?
And Peter Pan, the kid who flies into your window, paralyzes the dog with magic dust, and steals your children.
To take them to Neverland? You're telling me that is actually the ancient Nephilim Changeling Protocol?
I've been reading this to my niece, Dave. Do you know what you're doing to the Channel 4 demographic right now?
Well, Gil is currently having an existential crisis over Peter Pan. But the folklore lines up perfectly. And this wasn't just happening in the misty, green forests of Europe. The exact same entities were operating in the blistering deserts of the Middle East. Islamic folklore tracks an ecosystem of entities called the Jinn. According to their texts, the Jinn were created from smokeless fire, making them energetic, non-physical beings. They live in the desolate places, the ruins, and the caves. They can shapeshift. They abduct humans. They cause sickness and mental distress. And according to legend, King Solomon possessed a ring that allowed him to bind these entities and force them to build his temple. Different cultures, different languages, different centuries. They're tracking the exact same ecosystem of territorial, earth-bound spirits. But there is one specific name from the Bronze Age we need to bring back, because it bridges ancient world directly to ours. In Deuteronomy chapter 2, the Israelites list the tribal names of the giant clans they wiped out. One of those tribes was called the Zamzummim. When you translate the ancient Hebrew root word of Zamzummim, it means the murmurers, or more accurately, the buzzing ones. Which brings us to today. In 1969, an astrophysicist, computer scientist, and venture capitalist named Jacques Vallée wrote a book that shook the UFO community to its core. It was called Passport to Agonia. Vallée wasn't a crackpot. He was the real-life inspiration for the French scientist character in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He was the top data-driven UFO researcher in the world. But as he ran thousands of UAP reports through early mainframe computers, he realized something that completely disrupted the modern extraterrestrial narrative. Vallée noticed that modern accounts of UFO abductions were completely identical to the ancient accounts of fairy abductions and Enochian Nephilim encounters. Think about the modern alien abduction narrative. Entities come in the dead of night. They paralyze the victim. There is a strange distortion of time, what modern researchers call missing time, and what medieval peasants called being trapped in the fairy mound for 100 years. There are bizarre medical experiments specifically focused on human genetics, extracting reproductive material and showing the victim's hybrid children. Vallée argued that the idea of hyper-advanced beings traveling billions of light years across the galaxy just to steal soil samples and abduct farmers in the middle of the night made absolutely zero scientific sense. And that bizarre, low-frequency humming, the mechanical murmuring sound reported right before almost every modern UFO abduction, it's not an engine. It's the Zamzummim, the buzzing ones. Vallée suggested that we aren't being visited by spacemen from other planets. We are interacting with an ancient, interdimensional mechanism that has always been here. A control system that just changes its mask to fit the vocabulary of the era it's interacting with. In the Bronze Age, humanity understood giants and spirits, so they called them the Nephilim. The Middle Ages, humanity understood magic, so they called them the Fae. Today, we live in an era of space travel and technology, so they project the illusion of extraterrestrials. They are the exact same entity, a trapped terrestrial intelligence suffering from a decaying genome, wearing a new disguise. If Jacques Vallée is right, if the UFOs of today are the fairies of the Middle Ages, and the fairies of the Middle Ages are the ghosts of the Nephilim from the Book of Enoch, then we have a terrifying realization to make. These entities are not gods. They are not our creators. They are just foot soldiers. They are the starving, disembodied scraps of a forgotten war, wandering the desolate places of the earth, trying to scratch their way back into physical reality. But if the foot soldiers are down here, trapped in the dirt, who is running the actual empire? Who sent the Watchers in the first place? Who built the hierarchy that spans across cultures, continents, and millennia? If you look at the real history of the Bible, you will realize that the foot soldiers are the least of our problems. Next time, we are leaving the dirt. We are leaving the cryptids, the ghosts, and the hybrids behind. And we're going to look up. Because the Bible tells us exactly who's in charge of the nations of the earth. It's not who you think it is. This is the Missing Bible. If this episode completely shattered how you view the folklore, the past, and the UFO phenomena of the present, hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. I want to hear from you down in the comments. Do you think Jacques Vallée was right? Are modern extraterrestrials just the ghosts of the ancient world wearing a high-tech mask? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay open, stay wondering, stay human.
Fossilized ribs in the mud of the pines, a heavy-set shadow detaching from lines. No home in the waiting, no slot in the deep. A cosmic-grade hybrid with promises to keep. From Rephaim shades in the feast of the dead, to the Bronze Age whispers of King Oak's bed. The bodies they rot, but the frequency stays. 13-foot phantoms in a carbon-dated haze. Change the name on the wall to hide the ghost. A control system mimicking the holy host. From the mossy mounds to the clinical blue, they wear the mask that resonates with you. The tether is terrestrial, the hunger is old. A story of orphans in a skin. I'll change the name, let the mythologizing start. It's a ghost in the marrow, not a trick. Medieval changelings in the dead of the night. A changeling protocol stealing the light. The Fae want the marrow, the Jinn want the spine. Searching for vessels to crossbreed the line. From the buzzing Zamzummim to the desert of sand. An ecosystem mapping the desolate land. No water for thirst and no bread for the soul. A genetic addiction out of control. Change the name on the wall to hide the ghost. A control system mimicking the holy host. The tether is terrestrial, the hunger is old. A story, the name, let the mythologizing start. It's a ghost in the marrow, not a trick. Passport